Well, after hours of uncertainty and heightened suspense, Kaduna State Election Tribunal rules in favor of Governor Sani of the APC in a close split decision of 2-1. But the APC governor carries the day. And ahead of Nigeria's 63rd Independence Day celebration, Vice President Kashim Shettima assures Nigerians that the Tinubu administration will fulfill the promises made just before it chairs the National Economic Council meeting. Well, it was a nail-biting experience today at the Kaduna State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal. Well, the anxiety began to mount just in the morning when the court announced that the judgment will be delivered via Zoom. Well, you may recall what happened in Kano last week when the judgment was delivered virtually. So naturally, the tension heightened. So all eyes were fixed on the screen as a three-man panel of justices delivered their judgment. Talk about edge of the seat scenario. But eventually, after over 5 hours, the tribunal dismissed the petition, which was filed by the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and its candidate in that election, Ashiru, against the victory of Governor Sani of the All Progressives Congress, APC, for lacking in merit. But let's break it down for you, really, because there's been a lot of narrative and talk out there. It was a dissenting judgment of 2-1. The panel, headed by Justice Victor Owawe, dismissed the petition on the ground that the pre-hearing notice was filed out of time and therefore deemed to be abandoned by the petitioners. The tribunal chairman and another member held that the appeal brought by the PDP and Mr. Ashiru against the dismissal of their petition at the preliminary stage by Senator Sani and INEC was not meritorious because the filing of the pre-hearing notice was abandoned and out of time and therefore had dealt the entire petition a fatal blow. But take a look at where things get even more interesting. The tribunal then noted that if the petition had not been dismissed for lacking in merit, it would have ordered for a supplementary election in 22 polling units within 90 days in the substantive judgment. So that may have explained or seems to explain some of the conflicting reports that made their way to the social media earlier on. But that's not all. We'd like you to take a listen to the counsels on the outcome of this judgment, and we'll come back for some more breakdown. Take a listen.
Has dismissed the petition filed by the PDP. That is the ruling of the tribunal in the morning. But, you know, by the provision of the Constitution, they are required to also consider the petition on merit. So on merit, two of them said that election is supposed to be conducted in 22 polling units because the number of the voters there exceed the margin of lead. But they have said that the PDP wanted it to be declared as the winner of the election. The tribunal said that they have no proof that. They allege that there are corrupt practices perpetrated by APC. They said they have no proof that. So in essence, as of today, the PDP petition is dismissed by the tribunal. Unless PDP appeal to the Court of Appeal, then we now know what will happen there. But the petition has been dismissed.
One way or the other, but we are still going to test an arm of the judgment too. It's okay. It's brilliant because we believe the materials we placed before is sufficient enough for the court to have even declared our candidate the winner of the election, because we know PDP won the election in Kaduna State.
That means you're not satisfied with the judgment?
Well, I cannot say we are not satisfied or we are satisfied, but then what I'm telling you is we'll go into this election and definitely we'll come back victorious. Based on the facts placed before it. Court arrived at a decision based on the submissions and argument of lawyers, and the majority of the tribunal judges decided that the election was inconclusive, and one judge affirmed the election. So, and the majority decision of the court is that the election was inconclusive.
Instant scenes playing out there, but for the benefit of our viewers, let's just show you how the election was called then by INEC. So INEC declared that Governor Sani of the All Progressives Congress scored 730,001 votes, while the candidate of the PDP, Mr. Ashiru, polled 719,000 10,196 votes. If you do the math, you realize that the margin between both votes, it's just 10,808. So that's how INEC called the election as at that time. But tonight, we'll be speaking with the governor of Kaduna State on the victory at the court. So stay with us on the program. We'll take you through what exactly played out, the implications, governance, and all of that on the program tonight. But before that, let's tell you about the assurance from Nigeria's Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, to Nigerians, and his words saying, "Your sacrifices will not be in vain." And he adds that the promises made by the Tinubu administration will be fulfilled. Well, he made the remarks today at a public lecture to commemorate Nigeria's 63rd independence anniversary at the State House Banquet Hall. And afterwards, he proceeded to chair the National Economic Council meeting, that's NEC, which had state governors in attendance, while some of them sent their deputies. But the resolution from that was that NEC appeals to organized labor to shelve the planned nationwide strike action. Don't forget, it is 5 days to the proposed strike by INEC. So we'll keep that in the can, keep monitoring what's going on. But that's not all which is happening on the political scene. Let's bring you your political roundup.
The Supreme Court has fixed October the 23rd for judgment in a suit filed by former federal lawmaker Mr. Smart Adeyemi challenging the conduct of the Kogi State governorship primary of the All Progressives Congress, APC. Mr. Adeyemi is also challenging the validity of the election, which produced Mr. Usman Ododo as the party's flag bearer for the November 11 governorship election. The Apex Court had dismissed the appeal filed by a governorship aspirant of the All Progressive Congress in Kogi State, Mr. Abubakar Achimugu, who is also seeking to nullify the same primary. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, has asked the organized labor to respect the June 5 order issued by the National Industrial Court, restraining both the Nigeria Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress from embarking on any industrial action or fuel subsidy removal and related issues. In a letter to the NLC and TUC and Mr. Femi Falana, the AGF says that the plan by both labor bodies to embark on indefinite strike from October the 3rd was a violation of the subsisting order and a disregard to the dignity and integrity of the court. The AGF urged Falana to prevail on his clients to respect the order of the court and give room for ongoing negotiations between parties on how to address the challenges associated with the fuel subsidy removal. The Ogun State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal has fixed Saturday the 30th of September to deliver its judgment in the petition brought by the governorship candidate of the PDP, Mr. Ladi Adebutu, before the three-man panel led by Justice Hamidu Kunaza. The Ogun State chapter of the People's Democratic Party and its governorship candidate had approached the tribunal challenging the declaration of the governor of the state, Dakwa Abiodun, as the duly elected governor of the state. And Governor Hyacinth Alia of Benue State has been reacting to the judgment of the Election Petition Tribunal, which upheld his election last weekend, while expressing his appreciation to the people of the state when he addressed party supporters at IBB Square in Makurdi. Mr. Alia explains that the court had demonstrated that it is the last hope of the common man. The governor assures the people of more infrastructural development as he called on the opposition parties to support his efforts in building the state.
Just before we get into our big conversation tonight, let's make a quick stopover in Edo State. Yes, there's been a lot of political drama playing out there, but it looks like the crisis between the state governor, Godwin Obaseki, and his deputy, Philip Shaibu, may have just come to an end, as the governor today accepted his deputy's public apology, which was put out last week. He put out a statement today, and part of it reads, in fact, he personally signed that statement. It reads that, "I have noted the public apology made by the Deputy Governor of Edo State, His Excellency Right Honorable Comrade Philip Shaibu. This apology followed an aberrant behavior that contradicts what the people of Edo State stand for." It goes on to say, "Although these unwarranted provocations caused me severe personal discomfort, as a person of faith, I am under obligation to accept this apology because, as they say, to err is human, to forgive is divine." So that's the latest with the situation in Edo. Let's get into our conversation tonight. What a day it turned out to be at the Kaduna Election Petition Tribunal. A verdict has been given in favor of Governor Sani. So let's hear from him tonight. Joining us from our Abuja studio is His Excellency Governor Sani of Kaduna State. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you were at that NEC meeting when the court's proceedings were on. I wonder if you were able to concentrate, because it's natural. You may want to keep your mind on what's going on at the tribunal with, all of the important things also going on. So were you able to concentrate at NEC with the judgment going on at the tribunal?
Of course, 100%, because I have no doubt in my mind that the people of Kaduna State gave me popular mandate, and I also have no doubt in my mind that our lawyers who represented us at the tribunal made our case clear. There was never a time PDP proved anything that actually showed that the election was not free and fair. And that was the reason why I was very, very focused on the NEC meeting today, which we actually discussed a lot of things that affects the economy of the country and our own states. And I'm happy after the NEC meeting, when I had the news that the tribunal dismissed PDP's application against the election. Of course, I was not surprised, because throughout the tribunal sitting, our lawyers were briefing me about what was happening. And as someone who was part of the Electoral Act in this country, don't forget that I was in the National Assembly for 4 years. And I was among the people that actually sat down together and amend the Electoral Act. So I know actually PDP did not have a case. They did not present any witness from any polling unit that actually was able to make any case or prove that the election was not free and fair. So that was my position, and I was focused, and I was not really distracted.
Well, we all know that the election itself was a very close one. I mean, looking at the numbers, only about 10,000 votes separated you from Mr. Ashiru. So we'll talk about some of the merits of the case, what came out at the court. But as a reaction to this judgment, it is still assumed that he still commands a huge following in the state. So what message do you have for him, for his supporters, those who voted for him?
I've already issued a statement, first to thank our followers, to thank our lawyers, to also thank the tribunal. In the statement, I also call on Ashiru and the PDP members in Kaduna State to come and join hands with me. What is more important is moving our state forward. Like I said on the 29th May when I was sworn in, that the issue of politics is over. It's about governance. And of course, in the last 3.5 months, we've tried as much as possible to carry everyone along. If you look at what's happening in Kaduna, I was very focused. We've done a lot in trying to improve the infrastructure in our rural areas. We've done a lot in the healthcare development. We've done a lot also in making sure that we look at the security of the state, and we've been able to collaborate with all the security agencies in Nigeria. So we've done a lot in trying to see that we work for the people of Kaduna State, making sure that we try to fulfill our promise. But in my own statement, I made it clear that actually I thank Ashiru for even approaching the tribunal to ventilate his own grievances, because as a Democrat, I believe if you are not satisfied with an election, you should approach the court. Of course, looking at my background as someone who has spent most part of my life as a civil rights activist, someone who fought for the internal democracy in Nigeria, I believe in democracy, rule of law. Of course, that was why when Honorable Ashiru approached the tribunal, I believe it is within his own right. But today, the tribunals have made their own judgment. They dismissed the case. That was the reason why, in my own statement, I call on him, his supporters, and also call on my supporters to be calm. It's about Kaduna State. It's about moving our state forward. And I thank him for even contesting the election, for also going to the tribunal. But today, I think what is more important is Kaduna State and the progress of our own state. So that is my message to him, message to all the supporters of Ashiru and our supporters to be calm. Let's work together. Let's move our state forward. Kaduna State is a very important state. And I think working together, it will be in the best interest of everyone in Kaduna State.
So let's break down this judgment, if we can. There's a technical part of it. First, it was a split decision 2-1. Secondly, which is a major one, the panel said, and if we could just put it up, that if the decision or the petition had not been dismissed for lacking in merit, it would have ordered for a supplementary election in 22 polling units within 90 days. And you may have seen the narrative out there, because some see that and say, okay, this is something to hold on to. So it's rather confusing for some. How are you taking that?
I think there's no confusion there. Like I said, some of us that have been involved in the draft of the Electoral Act, there's nothing like confusion there. The case was dismissed because it lacks merit. The primary objection or the application was made out of time. And of course, if we look at the Electoral Act, that alone have made their case abandoned. So that is on the point of law. And there are a lot of cases like that. And of course, so we are not here to talk about propaganda. Like I said, there are two things here. You either win political battle or you win propaganda battle. So what I think PDP started doing, and they misinformed and misled some very important media houses that I became extremely disappointed in them. When the ruling was going on, some media houses went to the press, and I was disappointed because, like some, you will agree with me that 20 years ago, precisely 2003, 2007, I was a spokesperson for President Obasanjo. And of course, I know media very well. Some of them are my friends. And of course, I was disappointed that even some of the reputable media houses can go to the press without waiting for the final ruling. For me, it's really unfortunate. We need to be very careful because some of us have encouraged the issue of social media. We believe people should go and do, we should be allowed to express themselves. But when you see reputable media houses misinforming the general public when the ruling was not concluded, but at the end of the day, for me, what is more important, the ruling have been made, the case have been dismissed, and there's nothing anybody can do because it's on the point of law. But what the judges said is clear. There was a Supreme Court ruling already that, of course, judges are allowed to read all the applications by the opposing party. That's the lawyers, but in any case, that does not stop the case being dismissed if there's anything that warrants that. And that's what they do. They dismiss the case on the basis of the fact that they abandon their own case. That is the issue. But of course, like I said, as a Democrat, as someone who for democracy in Nigeria, as someone who believes in the rule of law, PDP can appeal. It's within their right to appeal, and it's okay. But for me, I don't come here and say anything against judiciary. I'm someone who really believes in judiciary, believes in the rule of law, because I fought for democracy in Nigeria. I'm a Democrat. So I will not sit down and attack judiciary, because at the end of the day, we need to respect the rule of judiciary. And for me, that is why I respect the judgment. They dismissed the case. And of course, sitting here, I've contested election in the past. I won 2 elections and I lost 2 elections. So I know what it means to lose an election. But of course, there was never a time when I lose election that I start to doubt the judiciary, because I believe in the rule of law. I believe it's very important.
Right. So aren't you worried then, Your Excellency, that this might be upturned at the upper court, seeing that there's an obvious inroad, an obvious technicality here, which is the talk about, well, the court could have ordered a supplementary election. So aren't you concerned that this might be something that might topple your case at the upper court?
No, I'm not worried about, because of course, when you go to appeal, you have to also set aside the ruling by the tribunal, which I respect the judges, because I believe, like I said, we need to always respect our judiciary. You need to set aside. That's the most important thing. But their judgment is something that have already been proven by the Supreme Court previously. So I don't think it's something I should be worried about.
Right. But still looking at that margin, really, what do you think was responsible? Because some would say the APC had ruled or governed the state for 8 years. So it was expected that at least the APC will get some magnanimity from the people in terms of elections. But coming that close, just over 10,000 votes. So do you see that as a verdict on the kind of governance that APC has given the state for 8 years? What exactly?
I don't think that was the reason, because if you ask me, you know, there were 2 elections. The first one, I think why the PDP believed they can even win the governorship election was simply because, remember, just before my election, I came to the Channels Television and I granted interview with you guys. And at that point, PDP were going around with propaganda that they are going to win a governorship election in Kaduna. But I made it clear to you that the people of Kaduna State are very clever people. They are people that are extremely very knowledgeable about the 2 candidates, myself and Honorable Ashiru. And they know our track record. As a senator, they know what I did. So that was the reason why I defeated the PDP candidate. And again, when you remember the first election, that's the House of Reps and the Senate, probably because we lost some of the seats. And that is one, so we lost momentum at that time. But eventually, like I said before the election, that look, the people of Kaduna State will come out to vote for any candidate based on his track record. I'm sitting here as the governor because the people voted for me based on my track record. That is why. So, and in politics, whether you defeated a candidate with 5,000, 6,000, 100,000, 200,000, it doesn't matter. What is more important is winning an election. I will win the election.
So let's talk about governance. Yes, the coming days, weeks will be interesting at the courts, but there's still the job of governance to be done. We'll begin at the national level because you were at the NEC meeting today and you said you were not distracted, you were focused 100%. So speak to us, what decision or what kind of resolutions were made at the NEC meeting, particularly on the labor strike and demands by the unions? Is the government acceding to the request of labor? What exactly do we expect? Because you're a key member of NEC yourself.
Of course, I am a key member of NEC, and I can tell you that we as state governors have been also talking with the labor unions at the state level. And of course, I can tell you, probably most of this information coming out are misleading, because Mr. President is someone who believes in making sure that he carries everyone along. The Nigeria Labour Congress, the TUC, and all labor unions and their affiliates in Nigeria are really involved in what we are doing generally. And they know the problem facing our own country. And let me give an example. When I started with the labor in Kaduna, and the same template is being used in many other states in Nigeria. Yes, I agree there was a fuel subsidy removal in Nigeria, which of course you will agree with me that is one of the best decisions taken by Mr. President. Of course, because you know the level of corruption involved in the fuel subsidy, you know it has never moved Nigeria forward. And of course, fighting corruption, you have to be ready that corruption will fight you back. That's what's happening. But having said that, if you look at like I always said, I am someone who believes in the labor movement, because as a civil rights activist, we fought to get out of the labor. But we have to understand, when you remove the fuel subsidy, I always say this in Kaduna whenever I'm having meetings with the Nigeria Labour Congress and the other union leaders, that look at the public servants in Nigeria. Particularly, let me talk about Kaduna State. If you look at the population of those working in government, they are no more than 1% of the population of Kaduna. And when we are looking at how do we solve this problem of fuel subsidy, how it affects the economy of the people generally, we have to talk about people that cannot be on the table. I'm talking about those people that are vulnerable, underserved, poor people within our society. You talk about the market women, you talk about the farmers, you talk about people with disability, you talk about all other different groups in Nigeria. They are also affected. They go to the same market, they use the same transportation, and they constitute about 90% of the population, like in my own state. So If we want to solve this problem, we have to look at everyone holistically, because everyone goes to the same market. So when we're looking at the issue of workers in Nigeria, we should also look at the farmers. We should look at those people that are doing small businesses. We have to look at people with disability. We have to look at other people within our society who are downtrodden, who are vulnerable. These are people that I think people tend to forget. They constitute about 90%. So that is the reason. So when we're trying to look at this issue, listen to the demands of the Nigerian labor, because we believe their demands are also very, very important, and we need to address it. But on the other hand, we also have to look at those that could not be on the table when we're taking those decisions. You will never see market women sitting there. You will not see farmers sitting there. You will see people with disabilities sitting there. You will not see people that are running small and medium enterprise businesses sitting there. You know, all those, what are people working in the private sector? They are also important. They are going to be affected. They will go to the same market. So the approach here is to look at this issue from a bigger picture. And that is what President Aswaji is doing. And I have no doubt in my mind, I'm going to urge the Nigerian Labour Congress, the TUC, and all other trade union leaders to give us President Aswaju a bit of time. He has a good plans. We, the governors, have good plans for everyone. But we have to be very careful in the way we approach this issue so that we then take promises that we cannot fulfill. That is what's happening at the moment.
I mean, hearing you speak about the president, I just recall that you were also part of his entourage to the ONGA in New York, the 78th United Nations General Assembly. You were a strong part of that delegation. You had sessions with the president, and you've since returned. Now, there have been questions about where the president is, his whereabouts. You returned without him. Are you aware of where the president is? Are you also concerned?
Look, that is propaganda. You know, so in Nigeria, people, instead of to be praising Mr. President for his own very important speech at the ONGA, because what President Aswaji did in United Nations Assembly is unprecedented, because he spoke as the leader of Africa. And I can tell you what he has achieved in the 2 days we were with him in New York. I don't think there's any leader in Africa that have done that. So he has discussed with a lot of important private sector, a lot of bilateral meetings with other presidents, side meetings with presidents, and that will give Nigeria a lot of opportunities. And he is also repositioning Nigeria as the leader of Africa. That is the issue. People should be talking about governance, talking about what has President Aswaji have done for Nigeria. Instead of that, people are talking about rumors, talking about propaganda. Like I said, I started by telling you there are two things in life. You either win propaganda battle or you win political battle. Aswaji is winning political battle. But the other people are winning propaganda battle. But propaganda battle has limitation. Very soon, they will stop it because you will prove them wrong. For me, that is key. Have we sat down and analyzed President Aswaju's very important speech at the United Nations that drew the attentions of leaders who are not even from Africa or from other continents? For the first time, they have seen hope in Africa. They have seen a president that have gone to speak for Africa. They have seen the opportunities in Africa. He made it clear to them. For me, this is what we should be celebrating. But in Nigeria, we are wasting our time on propaganda when we should praise our leader, what he has done to reposition Nigeria, to make us a leader in Africa. That is the issue that is more important to me.
We're due for a break now. We're due for a break now, Your Excellency, but in the spirit of transparency and accountability, are you aware of the president's location? Because there are Nigerians who want to know.
Listen to me, because I'm not going to be involved in that. Mr. President, as I'm speaking with you, he is also busy talking, reaching out to other investors across Europe to ensure that Nigeria benefits from other meetings that he should do. So why are people sitting down talking about that? Mr. President is fine. He's doing very well. Myself, I only returned today. Some have not returned until the next 2 days. So this issue is not an issue that I think anybody should waste his time answering. That's my position.
All right, we're due for a break now. There's still a lot to cover. Governance in your state, the security, the economy. There's a potential which a lot of people talk about in Kaduna State, as well as other issues which we'll look into when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Let's remind you that the Governorship Election Petition Tribunal for Kaduna State has dismissed the petition which was filed by the People's Democratic Party's candidate, Mr. Isa Ashiru, in the Kaduna governorship election. So here's what the court decided on as a refresher, just in case you're just joining us. The ground for dismissal of the case by the three-man panel of the tribunal is that the preliminary appeal by the petitioners was filed out of time and therefore deemed abandoned. There you go. And the decision was a split 2-1 decision. And there was another interesting part of that judgment, which has gotten a lot of people talking. So take a look at that. The tribunal in that judgment also noted that if the petition had not been dismissed for lacking in merit, then it would have ordered for a supplementary election in 22 polling units within 90 days. But the substantive decision judgment overall was the tribunal dismissing that case and upholding the election of Governor Sani. But here's what the INEC called for that election some months back. The candidate of the APC, now Governor Sani, polled 730,001 votes, while Mr. Isa Ashiru of the People's Democratic Party had 719,196 votes. The margin, the difference between both results, 10,808. Of course, the People's Democratic Party say they're going to pursue this case much further. But let's continue with our conversation with His Excellency Governor Sani, who, of course, emerged victorious in that election and now at the tribunal. Thank you for staying with us, Governor Sani. Well, quite a number of issues to still cover, but let's dive into governance in your state. And I'll begin with security, which usually comes top naturally. Just Tuesday night, bandits are reported to have stormed Takanai village of Zangon Kataf local government area of your state and killed about 6 persons, while 4 others sustained injuries. Tell us, what are the outstanding issues really with curbing insecurity, particularly banditry and terrorism in Kaduna State?
Thank you very much. I think, of course, we heard of what happened in Zangon Kataf, but like I said earlier, the issue of insecurity in Kaduna State have been addressed gradually. Because I can say here that both the service chiefs, the chief of army staff, the chief of air staff, and and the chief of defense staff, who happens to be from Kaduna, General Christopher, we are working closely together with all of them. And you will also agree with me that we are lucky because even the chief army staff, General Labaja, was GOC War Mechanized Division in Kaduna before he became the chief army staff. So we are working closely together. We have a very strong security team working, and that's the reason why the issue of banditry have reduced in Kaduna. But of course, one life for us is very important. We cannot lose a life, and we think so. Of course, when that happened, I also quickly went back to the chief army staff, and he assured me that his men have done extremely well in trying to also stall some of the bandits, and also been able to arrest a lot of, because they have not announced that a lot of bandits have been arrested in Kaduna along that axis, numbering into about 60, 70 as we are speaking. But I think the army have done extremely well. I have no doubt in my mind we will certainly address the problem of insecurity in Kaduna. As I can tell you, as I'm speaking also, I can tell you that we are now doing Security Council meeting in Kaduna every 2 weeks that comprises the commander of the army there in Kaduna, the Navy, the Air Force, the Commissioner of Police, DSS, Immigration, Custom, and all the security agencies in Kaduna. We sit down also with traditional rulers because they're really helping us because we believe we need them as because of intelligence gathering. And of course, only last 3 weeks, I recruited about 7,000 very active men and women into our Kaduna Vigilance Service because that is being proactive in terms to address the issue. Because when I sat down with the army staff, he encouraged me because we know that we are lacking the boots on ground. And we believe we need to recruit more young men and women in our Kaduna Vigilance Service. We've done that, 7,000 of them are just about to finish their training in the Nigerian Police College. With the support of the Nigerian Police, the DSS in Kaduna, they are working together with them. So in Kaduna, we are doing very well in terms of trying to address the issue of insecurity. But I know it's not something that can end today. But I have no doubt in my mind with what we've done so far, because one of the most important pillars of our government is safety and security of our people. But that is the reason why, like I always said, we know this situation. That's why I believe it's something that we have to look at both aspects of trying to solve this problem. We're looking at the kinetic approach and non-kinetic approach. So that's the reason why I'm working closely with both the Army, the police, the Air Force, but also making sure that our local Kaduna Vigilance Service are working with them closely. So in Kaduna, I have no doubt in my mind we have been very, very proactive, and within a very short time we will address this issue. I have no doubt in my mind because we are investing a lot in trying to ensure the safety and security of the people of Kaduna State. I also want to thank our traditional rulers, our religious leaders, our community leaders who are working closely with the government, with the security agencies in Kaduna State. And they are giving us a lot of intelligence report that the security are working on. And I have no doubt in my mind we will address the issue. That's what we've done so far, and we'll continue to do our best until we end the issue of insecurity in Kaduna State by the grace of God.
So also speak to us about some of the undercurrents. Now, this attack in southern Kaduna particularly is not the first, and this has happened consistently. Is there a reason why southern Kaduna keeps coming under these sorts of attacks, really?
Let me. I think what I need to do is to correct the impression. Number one, like I said, as a governor, every life matters, and of course, we don't want to lose any life in Kaduna State, because for me, as a leader, the most important thing I need to do is protect the lives and property of our people. But if you look at this holistically, if you look at the records, we are losing a lot of people in the Zangon Katab Aziz because of banditry. But where this issue is very, very serious is Benengwari Aziz. Because the reason why Benengwari, that is in central zone, where I was representing as a senator for 4 years before I became governor, is simply because they share borders in Benengwari with Zamfara State, with Kaduna State in some cases, and Igabi local government. These two local governments and Giwa, we are losing more people in the past, including some Zangon Katab. But today, like I said, we lost more lives even in Benengwari, as is because they share borders with Niger State and some part of Kaduna State. That is the reason. But of course, when you look at the Zangon Katab Aziz, like I said, we are having joint operation with the army that are working along the Aziz of Nasarawa and Plateau State. So what we are doing, we are funding the operation. But I believe in the last few months, I sat down with the governor of Niger State, Kaduna State, Zamfara State, which we share the same border. I'm also working now with the governor of Plateau State because we met today at the next meeting, and I told him we need to sit down with him. And we're working closely with the National Security Advisor to ensure that we have a coordinated approach to ending this insecurity. Because the problem is that we share borders. When we attack the bandits, they move to the other state. And if we leave them not tackling the problem, they will still come back to attack us. That is what's happening. But like I said, all the governors are now working together. I've always said this thing time and time again, even when I was a senator, that look, no state can approach this issue individually. You must have a joint operation. And that is what we are doing. So the Aziz of Zangon Katab to southern Kaduna, we are working closely with the states we are sharing borders with them, Nasarawa, Plateau State, because that is key just as we are also working closely with Kaduna State Governor, Niger State Governor, Zamfara State Governor. This is the issue. If you don't work together, you cannot be able to tackle this problem in security.
So we'll talk about the, would I call it the regional approach? Yeah. We might talk about the regional approach, but quickly, still on that point, for those, particularly in southern Kaduna, who felt left behind, some of them abandoned by the government, is there anything you're doing differently this time around to at least prove and go beyond reasonable doubts that your government is indeed for everyone?
So if you probably, I think if you are really talking to all the community leaders across the entire state, whether southern Kaduna or central or northern part of Kaduna, they will tell you, since I was elected, we've been having a series of meetings with the leadership of all the zones. And I'm happy to say that I also have to thank them, that whenever I call them, they try as much as possible to meet me, for us to sit down. They are really, really very cooperative. They are supporting me. All the retired generals from southern Kaduna, they will be working with them, and even community leaders and traditional rulers there. And that is the reason why, like I said, I believe we will address the issue. Like I said, it's not government that can do it alone, but we need the support. And what is happening at the moment, let me give an example. When I went to start my projects a few weeks ago, when I was doing groundbreaking of constructing 32 roads in rural areas in Kaduna, I made it clear to the people of Kaduna that whether you voted for me or not, we'll take development to every part of Kaduna State, because politics is over. And that is the reason why, if you look at the southern part of Kaduna, we have done groundbreaking to construct at least 12 major roads across the local governments there. And just like I'm doing in other part of Kaduna. So for me, it's about making sure that you carried everyone along.
All right.
And that's the reason why they are supporting me. I don't think there's anybody in the leadership of either Northern Canada or Southern Canada who have come out openly to accuse me of anything, because they know I consult them, we sit down with them, we talk to them. So nobody will talk about marginalization at all. And when we're recruiting the 7,000 vigilant service, you can hear that nobody talk about marginalization, because we try as much as possible to do everything and make sure that we give everybody sense of belonging. We don't believe in political affiliation, religious affiliation, or ethnic.
Right.
We believe everyone that lives in Kaduna must be treated equally. So for me, that is what is happening at the moment, and that's why I don't think anybody is complaining. Even the people in PDP, majority of them, I can tell you today, they are supporting me. Why are they supporting me?
Very interesting claims there, Your Excellency.
Is the key.
Because I imagine the PDP will say, well, that is not the case, but we understand how the politics go. But I was going to come to the regional security, if I can call it that, because you talked about Zamfara, and it's very important. We've just seen the abduction of students, we've seen kidnappings, killings, and the rest. So I'd like to know what the approach is. Are you collaborating? What kind of approach are you taking? For the Zamfara state governor, well, he says there will be no negotiations. In fact, there's been this spat between the Zamfara government and the federal government over whether or not there's been some sort of dialogue or negotiations with the bandits. Your predecessor was of the opinion that, well, there should be a bombardment of those forests. Just bombard the forest and, get it leveled to the floor. Do you share those same sentiments? In terms of negotiations, do you also share those sentiments?
Okay, let me be very clear here. When I was in the Senate, remember, I was the person who sponsored the bill for the creation of state police and also sponsored the bill for the Firearms Amendment Act. I'm familiar with this situation, but of course, we are politicians. We are not security men, we are politicians. Of course, my position always is that the lesser we politicize the issue of security or insecurity in Nigeria, the better for all of us. For me, my approach always is that, look, we must approach this issue by attacking the bandits, I believe in kinetic approach. But when I met the chief of the air staff, when I visited him in his office, I met the chief of army staff, I met the chief of defense staff, all of them together sat down with us and said, look, we believe we have to look at these two approaches. We're not saying negotiate with any bandits. No, we're not saying that. But when the security people are now advising you that, look, we have intelligence report that is meant for the intelligence community, I mean the security. I think we politicians, we should give them the benefit of that. Because at the end of the day, like I'm talking, when bandits attacks my people, I rush the chief of army staff, the chief of the defense, the chief of the air staff, the chief of defense staff, and the inspector general of police, and the director of SSS, or intervention. So why wouldn't we now also listen to their advice? That is the reason why sometimes we need to give them the benefit of that, because they are the people that have this intelligence more than all of us. We are politicians. Sometimes our opinion is important, but does it matter sometimes? I don't think when it comes to issue of security, you should allow those head of security agencies to lead while we follow them. Because there are many things they know that we don't know. So for me, and we look, in the course of this battle, let me make it clear, we've lost a lot of security personnel in Nigeria. Recently, what happened in Niger, recall, we've lost a lot of the many states in the course of fighting these bandits. So when they come with their own suggestion, their own advice, their own approach, we don't have to rush to go against them. We need to listen to them. As I'm speaking with you, even by next week, we are going to continue our meetings with the service chiefs, the National Security Advisor. Right. So that is the reason why sometimes we as politicians, like I said, coming from National Assembly for 4 years, we try to strengthen this institution, amending these laws, updating them to strengthen the institution. But in most cases, we did not achieve much. But then that's the reason why I believe we should always don't sit down and argue with the approach of the security heads in Nigeria.
But I imagine that doesn't take away from the fact...
are working with us.
Right, I imagine that doesn't take away from the fact that you remain, and other governors remain, the chief security officers of the state at any point in time. So the buck naturally should stop at your table. Yes, collaborate, but stops at your table. So does that mean you disagree with your colleague in Zamfara State on that negotiation bit and the back and forth with the government?
Before I answer this question, I need to also correct an impression. Look, some people that were in the National Assembly might not understand this. You might be very educated, but you have to understand why. Well, if you look at just look at the reason why some of us, when we were in the National Assembly, someone like me sponsored the creation of state police. I will tell you why. Today, sitting here, I can leave this studio and I will hear that the Commissioner of Police of Kaduna have been transferred. You know why? Because that is what it is in the Constitution. State governors are only chief security officers, but they don't control the army, they don't control the police, they don't control the DSS, they don't control any of the security agency in Nigeria. That is the reason why someone like me spent 4 years in National Assembly agitating for the creation of state police. Unfortunately, we almost got to at the Senate level. But when we went to the conference committee with the House of Reps, some governors, sadly, even from northern Nigeria, pushed their members of the National Assembly to oppose it. But when the constitutional amendment was almost over, most of them agree that we need state police because it's key. Some were afraid if you create a state police, the state governor will use them for his own political benefit. But we said, look, we look at the constitutional provision, we look at the fact that we can recruit state police using the same approach, the same qualification, the same procedures with the federal police force.
Right.
But at that time, some of us were defeated. Today, like I said always, whether we like it or not, you want to address the issue of insecurity in Nigeria, you must create state police. And I think that's me saying this thing. And until that happen, whatever argument we want to have is an academic argument, because the security agencies in Nigeria are being controlled centrally by the federal government. That is the fact of the matter.
Well, certainly something to chew on as we wind down tonight. Very important point you've made, and I think we have to anchor at this point, really. We'd like to thank you so much. You recently celebrated 100 days in office, and I imagine that there should be more to come for the people of the state in the coming 100 days or more. We've been speaking with His Excellency Governor Sani of Kaduna State. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's been the program for today. Not to worry. Tomorrow, we're going to give you another side to this conversation. So stay with us right here on Channels Television. I'm Kaido Kikulu. Have a wonderful night.